Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Megan. I'm a director at Tanya Bonakdar Gallery, and I wanted to introduce to you all Xiaoyu, who is an associate curator at the Guggenheim. We're very happy to have her here today to have a conversation with Liu Shiyuan, who has a solo exhibition at our gallery in Los Angeles. The show goes on through January 30th, 2021. And it consists of photographs, drawings, and a new video work. And we'll be sharing some images of the show throughout the presentation so everyone at home can take a look at the show as well online. So without further ado, I'll pass it on to Xiaoyu to get us started.
Thank you, Megan, and thank you for inviting me to be in conversation with Shiyuan today. I have known Shiyuan as a friend and also a colleague, artist, collaborator for a long time. So it's really great to be able to have this conversation with her. And Shiyuan, I'm just gonna jump into my question right away. And I know it's a little late over there in Copenhagen, but my first question was concerning your new film that is part of the solo exhibition at the gallery. And the title is For the Photos I Didn't Take, for the Stories I Didn't Read. You actually reintroduced the viewer this classic fairy tale called The Little Match Seller by Hans Christian Andersen. I think me, probably just like you, we grew up listening to this story over and over and over again, maybe since we were really little. At the same time, I think maybe it's not very familiar to all of our audience that many of these so-called innocent and children-friendly fairy tales that I didn't know when I was younger were in fact written with many grotesque and even, scary and frightening details. Besides the little match seller who died in the end of the story, that was really sad. We also know Brother Grimm's Cinderella. For example, there's details of both stepsisters cut off parts of their feet in order to fit into the crystal shoe. And also the prince didn't notice initially, only when a dove tells him that there is blood dripping. And then at last, the prince finds Cinderella and the doves picked out the stepsister's eyes. So all these details we might actually ignored when we were little girl, or maybe being told with different ways. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more. How do you interpreting particular the story of the little match seller, and also just how you think about fairy tales and what has that to do with your work and also your upbringing, and more importantly, your cultural context now, being born, raised in Beijing, but now are based in Copenhagen and spend most of your time living, work in a cultural environment that is very foreign and strange, and where also this fairy tale is actually coming from originally. And then that perhaps would also serve as a great sort of introduction of you as an artist and also your practice in general.
Yeah, okay. I think I will just first start talking about the writer of the Little Match Seller a little bit. I think actually Hans Christian Andersen, when he wrote the stories, he was writing it for kids and adults both. He never thought that he was a children story writer, but his reputation beyond Scandinavia area was a quaint 19th century writer of charming children's stories. And himself, in his real life, he actually had a lot of phobias. He was very afraid of dogs, and he always kept a long rope in his luggage while he was traveling, in case he needed to escape from a fair. So not only this story, but the other one called The Ugly Duckling, which we are also very familiar with. It reflects his own feeling of alienation. Also, this story, The Little Match Seller, is also related to himself. When he was a little kid, he was being raised in poverty. he lost his father, and he having to briefly work in a factory when he was only 11 years old in order to support his mother. So actually, almost all of his stories, the original writing was a lot more depressing than the translated version that we got as kids. And I'm totally like you, but I think for each kid is different. I think they react differently. I think Danish kids, Chinese kids, we couldn't see that how kids reacted to this story. But I remember when my mom was reading this story to me, I thought it was beautiful. I didn't visualize the horror parts at all. Maybe it was because I was way too little to really understand, or maybe it was because it was a reading voice from my mom, so nothing would go wrong. But I remember later on when I studied this story again very seriously in primary school, the students were asked to remember the central idea. We always have to remember what's the central idea of each article. Almost word by word, we couldn't make any mistakes. We have to say it reveals the darkness of capitalism, which is already very different from how this story functioned when my mom was a little girl. I think she was taught that we need to go outside save the people who are suffering from capitalism. They are waiting for us to save their life. And that is during the China Cultural Revolution time. And I just saw when I was making this video, I thought this story was almost forgotten. And I was like, I want to invite people to reread it. And but it's very funny. It's just this Monday, 3 days ago, there's one teacher from my son's kindergarten. He read this story, The Little Match Seller, to all the kids for the first time. And then he wrote in the parents' app, it's in the phone, it's for the parents that we can read the children's daily activity. And he wrote, unlike Denmark, there are kids in other countries are really poor and need help. Some of the kids thought we should send some rescue packages to them, while others didn't want to send their own money to other kids. And then I thought it was very interesting that this story is still being used in the same way after decades. It's just in a different historical context. So I think back to the reason that why I choose this story in my video work to invite people to read it again in a different way is because I think this story is just a story. I think there's always a political voice combined with it, different kinds of political voice. So if we say it's a mirror, maybe that's what Hans Christian Andersen was trying to do. If it's a mirror of the society, then it could be a mirror of different kinds of society based on how the local people understand the world, I guess.
Well, thank you so much. That was really great. I guess for me now, when I trying to recall the story, I was just thinking these images are flashing in front of my eyes, that the part that I feel very sympathetic about as a little kid was when the little girl peeking into the windows of these, you know, rich people's, wealthy upper class people's home, celebrating the New Year, because it took place in the New Year's Eve, where she saw all these delicious food and roast chicken. I don't remember every detail, but that's when I was a little girl that I think created a lot of imagination. Reading the text. I guess, so my next question, which, you know, the idea of image making come into my mind is very important and crucial to you in terms of the relationship between image making and meaning making. So what I just did, or when I was a little girl, I translated the text into my own head, into the imagination of these images and trying to visualize them. You had mentioned that the source of images that you use in your work mostly came from Google search or your personal iPhones. So these are mass-produced images that are readily available online. And how do you see in our current status, this overflow of images are actually altering the meanings of things around us? That also in the video and in your other work that in the show, there is this juxtaposition of image and text, right? And also a follow-up question is your photographic installation. Maybe, I'm not sure, maybe Megan, you can show an image of that. Also employs a lot of intriguing interplay between these cinematic language, which I see, I would call them the static, cinematic frames versus the still images. So maybe you can just tell us a little bit more in terms of these respects.
Yeah, okay. So there are two questions. I answer the first one first. I think usually when I start a project, it's just some habit thing now I'm used to start from doing Google image searching. I use Google image searching for words that I don't fully understand instead of using Google Translate or other dictionary. Because when I translate one word into another language, I get one result from one culture background. So when I use Google image, all the image comes from everywhere, can make me understand the word better. But when I look for footage or material online, I don't use Google. I go to this second-hand recycling website where the professional photographers, where they put their leftover photos from commercial projects. They put them over there to share with other people. And it's totally copyright free for any kinds of use. So I also talk to them on text about how you make the picture. So it was a very funny website. I use it a lot. And sometimes when I need a very specific footage or a picture, I also need to purchase them online. So the stock image or stock footage, which is usually uploaded by very, very professional and skilled photographers or DOP, I think they are the forefront of our technology because they are very into different kind of device, a camera lens. And I just like to combine their work together with my raw footage in my photo and video works. So when I do video and photo, I don't really separate these two. Usually when I do photo works, I will do a video. So if people see my exhibitions, if there's always like a video photos together, somehow I make them as one project. Things like I discover as one. I think I could use these two different kinds of mediums that I'm very familiar with, which are also the two ones I studied for a very long time. And by using them, I see myself as being a theater or a film director on top of being a conceptual artist. I think in this way of working, I just feel that I'm not working alone, although I literally am, but talking to the pictures and the footage, it somehow make me feel like I'm also talking to the people who made them, and I can read their stories, study from them. So it's a very free and a great feeling for me to communicate in this way. And back to the topic of internet, I think we are definitely engaging with something very new now, which has never ever happened before in our entire human history, that the internet is so powerful, the whole world can become one. But we lost a standard of understanding of fact along the way. And that I think is the main problem for us now, that everyone has their own filter combined with their browser. The result is based on their personality. So everyone's result is different. You don't get to know how other people understand things you can only focus on yourself's homepage, which is personalized. So I think the man who made the old jokes 10 years ago saying that, I don't need Google, I have my wife. I think they are probably using Google again now, because now they get their personalized result, which only shows what they want to see. And this is the opposite of what their wife can give to them, right? So back to social media on internet. When we scroll on social media every day to look at millions of pictures, we get all kinds of pictures. There's no warning of there's one kind of picture coming, you should be like careful. But you just have to get it and inhale it, and there's no talking. So I think people eventually become a little bit numb about images. I think when I do photos or videos, I like to take a very low intensity footage, put them together. The work creates a kind of sensibility. I think for me, as an artist, I want to try to bring back the emotion towards imagery from people, which I think it might be very important to us to notice now. And after every day's scrolling, I think eventually the result is we lost the capacity of true compassion. For example, if we see refugees' misery on daily news almost every day, not many, but just a few pictures appear to us repeatedly. And we look at them again and again, and eventually we think this whole thing is too misery, and there's basically nothing we can do, and we just leave it like this. This is all about how pictures function online. I think we have to notice somehow they are also advertisements. And in the advertisement field, which is very different from photo, image, painting, the artwork, in that commercial advertisement field, the function just doesn't go better when the quality of the image is better. It's another completely different way of communication. So nowadays, when you search a keyword, you get a result, and you see the start at the end of the searching, but you miss a middle part. The middle part is a calculation made by the computer based on your own data. Yeah, so that's my answer towards the internet. And the second question was the cinematic footage that I use in my works from a still and a moving image. I think besides calling myself a visual artist, I love also being a director. But when I work in the contemporary art way, I feel freer when I use video in my photo works and I use photos in my video works. In this way, I could make a connection between these two mediums. And there's a result. The result shows me a new way dealing with time. I think that's another way of making a film, telling a story, which I couldn't even approach if I have $1 million or a very professional team working with me. So by myself, when I make decisions on choosing elements or arranging the sequence, I think I do have the freedom, but not 100% totally, because I also have to listen to the voice from the original photographer. So the conversation between me and the footage, me and the other photographer, the conversation goes on and on, doesn't stop during the process of producing the works. And I can choose an endless amount of photos from the big archive online, from all kinds of people, different kinds of background all over the world. I think I feel very grateful that I can do so, that I can work in this way. there's also conflicts, of course. And as a director, during the process of choosing, selecting, making personal choices, I also have to keep my moral. There's something moral going on. For example, I don't judge the photos from other people. I can't say that this one is better, this one is cliche, and this one looks too ridiculous. They have to be equally the same to me, just as a stock image. So I think eventually when I select the ones, it's not really based on, somehow I feel like it's not me making the work, it's the work making the work. And when I try to tell a story, at the same time, I feel like it's someone telling me a story. So somehow it's the context which is more important than the original element. Yeah, another way I can explain it, as a director of a performance, for example, I don't really mind if my actors or performers are trained, professional, skilled, or they are normal people that I found on the street. But the conversation with them and what we can create together as the end result, that matters me more.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Also, I think there's this part that you talked earlier about the internet algorithm, where you see the images that you want to see. So it's unclear if we are perceiving the reality or the reality is altering us, right? Like this is also very interesting to think that your work, your relationship with these images that you use in your work, whether you are manipulating these images or maybe they are also in the process of changing what you want to say and the meaning of them. So I have another sort of a more formal and technical question about the framing of these words, because they all have very interesting irregular shapes that are non-traditional. They're not like a rectangular or, you know, the normal way of having what we understand as photographic work. Can you tell us a little bit more? How do you decide the shape of these images, and what is the sort of rule you're making to create these? Are they more improvisation or actually is more planned out?
Right. I actually never decided the outline figure of the frame, but I'll explain this from the beginning. I think first of all, I don't think a square or any like a certain figure should be our limitation. You know, when we shot a film, we started talking from what's the resolution, if it's a modern extra wide, or if it's a vintage 3x4. The resolution, the figure always means something, and it's very specific. You can choose either one, and it kind of refer to how this work eventually will be. But when I use photography to make a film, for example, then the edge of the photo can just end when the meaning of the image ends. So somehow it's all about talking. Like when you talk with someone, you just know when and where to stop. So I don't really get to decide the outline figure in advance, but it becomes like that when the story is complete, when the story is fully told. So yeah, that's the figure of the frames.
Maybe you can give us a little bit more concrete information or example. For example, this work right now on the screen might be a good way. Can you tell us a little bit more in terms of, you know, when you say the story ends, therefore the frame is, you know, completed in this shape? Maybe just tell us a little bit more of what this work is about and what the story is in there.
Yeah, I think this is a good example because the figure goes very much in different ways. I think there's something about, for example, as a language, each sentence, how many words you want to put in. There's some image that they are just very powerful by how they are, And this kind of footage, I just shouldn't say, it's like shouldn't say too much and let it be. It's powerful enough just as one, like isolated there, for example. And there's some footages that shouldn't be cut as a sharp line. It should just leave them over there as a melody or something like a moving. Did I answer?
Yeah, sure. So I'm gonna go into the next question. I think you already spoken a little bit earlier. From the first glance, when we look at your work, there is this very cool, quote unquote, rationality, right? Because there are a lot of grid, even though the shape is irregular. And there's also this idea, I feel like this feeling a little bit detached and indifferent, as you spoke earlier about how the image on the internet now makes us feel. And then there's also a feeling of like, from looking afar, there's this big blur of things and meanings, and it's almost abstract is a color field that you see. So they need and require for us to zoom in really to see what actually is inside of each of these images and what's really is inside of each frame. And then you start to discover and realize, oh, there is actually quite much warmth and intimacy and also stories that really kind of started to reveal itself with time and patience through observation. And there's a lot of dynamics there. Would you agree with this observation? And also, I think this is the first part of this question, and second part is, how do you approach or understand the history of strategies of conceptualism, minimalism, and abstraction? Because trained, as a combination, you're coming from a non-Western background, but you went to school in United States, you went to SVA, and now you live in Europe. And I'm sure you have a very different relationship and understanding of the history and trajectory of the development of these art movements. But I guess, again, just these works that now first showing in front of the screen, I think it's something new that I haven't seen before that you started, I suppose, is this grid making sort of color fields with very small squares that you fill in the color. And it also reminds me of some earlier generation artists that I admire, like Charles Skeens in particular, where he also used a lot of, color and the gridding and filling out these, systems that he came up. So maybe just talk a little bit more. I know it's a very big question, but just, I guess, give us a little bit more understanding of where your thinking process is.
Yeah, I totally agree with this dynamic and abstraction part in my work that you see. And I'm so happy that you notice, because I probably feel it, but I couldn't make it to be worse by myself before. And I think maybe everything is dynamic and or maybe abstract in a way. To explain this kind of movement in my works, the movement of meaning, if we can call it. I think I can start from giving an example. Maybe it will explain it better than I use language to do so. So I want to tell a story that like my dream. I just had a very weird dream yesterday. And in my dream, my upstairs neighbor, who is an older lady from Pakistan, in my dream, she appeared as my dad's grandma. And then she looked and dressed totally like my grandma. She just passed by me, walked away. And then I even called her. I called her, I said, "Grandma." And then she turned back around and said the deepest philosophical sentence to me. And I couldn't remember it very clearly, but it was something like, "The thing is not the thing. But if you feel it is, then it could be." Wow, I was very shocked. I was just thinking, wow, this is so smart. But then she added on top, she said, this is the beautiful part of art. And then I just felt a little bit sad because I was sure it's not my grandma. My grandma would never talk about art with me. So I guess in my works, there's something like this. If it is, doesn't matter. But the important thing is for the viewers, if they feel it is, or if they need it to be. So that is the important part. And also their emotion waves along reading the image, no matter if it's drawing or photo. It can start from wherever they want, and end at wherever they want. So it's like Xiaoyu said before, there's nothing 100% clear with one voice. Like a tiger doesn't mean power. Heart doesn't represent love. So what was the second part of the question?
Oh, it's the just sort of a general relationship with the history of conceptualism and minimalism in terms of, you know, how that impact your work, and also how your upbringing and your training in art and your diverse cultural context might had impacted you in different ways, and also occasion to talk about these little this little grid drawing new work that you have been producing, the color fields.
Yeah, I think I definitely got influenced by a lot of artists from the older generation. We studied and practiced it and learned from other people for so long time. My art education was almost too long. I was a kid who had no weekend. When I was 8 years old, every Saturday I have to go study drawing, and every Sunday I go study photographer. So I was only 8 years old, and I was developing films in this dark room. It's completely dark. I cannot see myself. I was so scared, but I still have to deal with the machine and the chemicals. And I just remember that every time there's something missing, or there's a cover of the lens broken, they also blame me because I was the youngest. But then back to the too long time art education, I think I was talking about this question with some of my friends a few years ago. I think we have something that we are carrying that we don't want to get rid of is a certain kind of respect to art, if we can say art exists. And there's some other kind of artists, they can be more playful or freer, but somehow we don't want art to be treated. I don't know if we can say that art can be treated, or if we can treat art. But if you know what I mean, is this kind of history we have studied and remembered deeply, and we carry some kind of responsibility unconsciously, maybe. So I think this grid is something, is probably the basic layout for all the artists, for all the visual, even designers. So I think some artists choose to use their grid in their work visually, like me, and some artists prefer to do not have it in their work, but kept it invisible in their mind. But somehow I think everyone has a grid inside of them, from the study of art, how you create an image. And I think a grid somehow helps me on doing a certain kind of calculation when I work. I really do calculation when I work. It's not like a physical calculation based on math, but it's a calculation that vaguely running in my mind, to arrange things and to make sense in a logical way, maybe in an emotional logical way. And I think I want to, including this grid visually thing, I want to show a certain kind of truth that has been hidden away from us. I want to dig out on talking about it again, that how come we get different answers from asking the same question, and how and when did we become passive? So in my studio, I calculate on how to arrange stuff, how to use different materials and elements, and how to balance between having an artist voice, clear or not clear one, having an artist voice in my work, but at the same time giving the audience freedom to read them. I think I would feel very honest if I don't hide anything. This is also one of the requirements I always have on myself. And here, I mean, don't hide anything, not at all, which is very, very difficult, but it has been what I was trying to do, try to bring in my works.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I just thought about also these grids of color field reminds me also when you're doing the Google search, well, the images are still loading. You don't actually see the actual images. They're just like color fields that whatever the color that the computer is picked to give you a background as the overall impression of this image. So it almost feel like this is another zooming out of our image field world, right? Like it's another even higher or bird eye view in terms of the scale of what we're looking at. So that is how I made sense of these works with your other, photographic work as well. And I thought that's really interesting. And then among the series, I think the other one, Megan, if you can screw over, this one is really, I really like it. It's really nice. Also, it, of course, reminds the idea of landscape and also the sort of, again, like the bird eye view of a bigger, I don't know, like a bigger impression of something. So yeah, so then I have my next question before I go into my last one is related to this one. You already mentioned a little bit, I guess if you could talk a little bit more. I know that you arrange these images as you say that you calculate in your studio what materials, what sequence, what they were being presented. And you are also seems to be fascinated with, creating your own system, whether it is pulling your subjectivity out and allowing more space for the audience participation, or is more in a controlled manner. So I just wonder if you think about systems and how does that impact your work?
Yeah, I think I have one. But I think to be more specific, where it comes from a feeling that I have, and maybe we can call it a trust. I think I just always want to show my fully respect to every single object. I think if there's a system, it's probably me, or it's probably the way I think about each details of life, gestures repeated every day, such as turn on the lights, close the doors, heat up the food, or double check if my husband really closed the refrigerator door. All these kind of things that are so real, and I would never ever dare to edit on top of them, because I think they are just how they are supposed to be. We can even call them something naturally perfect. So this kind of original objects, it's like but if we talk about this drawing, again, it's like when I use the drawing pen, I would never mix the colors together to make the color look richer. Or when I use photos in my work from other people, I don't I don't do any retouching. I just leave them there as how they are. So this kind of like a daily objects or small details happening to all of us, they are not special, they are not personal. I think I can include them in for as much as I can, as much as possible, as always a big amount of something going on in my work. But I can never ever say there's anything in my work that is objective. So it's like a little theater. All I can call my work is a stage, or a kind of play sometimes in a way. Yep. Back to my system. I don't really know how to directly explain that my practice as a system. I think it's difficult. It's like it's difficult to ask a chef what's your recipe. I think she probably has one, but for a lot of times she doesn't follow it. Yes.
Yeah, I think overall, it's also from what you just said, remind me of something that I saw today, a comment by saying, because I think a lot of your work are dealing with an artificial system that the technology or algorithm are trying to impose onto us. And today I read a quote about how talking about cybernetics is actually an insult on human subjectivity, because a human always think that we're unique and we have the free will to do and say whatever we want to say next. But then the theory of cybernetics actually trying to predict and anticipate. So it's actually a very interesting tension. But I feel like we're all now, whether we aware or not aware, we're entangled in in these kinds of tension every day in terms of a relationship with system, image, and also meaning generation. So I see your work, do not directly, didactically spell out all these issues, but it's always there and it's more deeply embedded and it's more richly kind of communicated. So we have about a few minutes left, and I wanted to ask a more relaxed question, or now just maybe what are you working now, like after, it must be a big relief after opening your show, and how has our current COVID home staying life impact your life and work, and also how do you generally balance it? And I know you actually is also a mother and live in a foreign context. We had exchanged these a little bit before, a while ago, but I think just give us a general update, and how do you deal with these things emotionally?
Yes. Yeah, that's a very emotional question. But then answer the first question, what I'm doing now, I'm just keep working. I already started a new project before the opening of the show, and it's a book project. It's gonna be the first time I publish a book, but it's not about myself at all. There's no formal works, there's no installation shots. It's gonna be a pretty dark book, a little bit like this, the Little Magic Seller story, how it works. It's gonna be a dark book about our future. And we talk about it through a political perspective, but using a children-friendly language. It includes 18 drawings from me, and each drawing represents a traditional Chinese keyword. And besides the drawing, there will be a word-based project explaining each keyword. Like I could do interview with someone, or I can invite people to write article or poetry related to how they understand this keyword. For example, 轻浮, in Chinese, 轻浮, this word, it's on the surface, the meaning is beautiful. It means something very light and it's floating in the air. But this word has been used to describe only female, only woman who was not behaving good enough in old China. like she would fall in love with someone freely and not following the parents' arrangement. So I think it's nice. It's a nice thing to talk about words like this and how we use it now, and what kind of questions we close, what kind of questions we reopen. So we want to have this book not only, maybe a little bit like has catch Anderson, not only for adults, but also is for kids. They can read our worldwide problems and having the ability to predict our future. But at the same time, we want to also encourage people to have hope by the style of the drawing or the language we use, or how our attitude overall that we put in this whole book. And to talk about COVID-19, I think this year is very, very difficult for everyone, I have to say. But maybe especially for the ones who need to travel to see families. I had a very depressed period that I don't know how to put meanings in my daily life. That was really not healthy. I'm still adjusting myself, but I kind of like started doing things. I could really recommend people to pay more attention on how to develop, for example, to do things that can push us forward. It's good to read a lot of books, for example, using this time, or watch really, really good films. I mean, really good ones. They are not probably on Netflix or HBO, but I started doing this. I spent $5 renting a really good film that I have been looking forward to watch long time ago for 48 hours available time, which is long enough for me to study it, taking notes, analyze it deeply. And then after I totally got it, I pass to the next one. So in this way, I move myself forward to study something and learn something from other people. And I also hope, I hope that people could notice being slow is also a beautiful thing. At this moment, we all have so much work needs to be done inside of us, not outside of us. It might be difficult to accept, but to approach that, to totally let it go, it doesn't need to be that hard. I think especially to people who are really struggling with lockdown, I think everyone shouldn't be looking forward to one day that we can go back to how we were before. And there's also no way to go back. So we must move forward, and we have to learn from what we can learn from this worldwide disaster. For example, if things can be done through an online meeting, then maybe we don't have to fly there. Or if things can be decided by a phone call, then maybe we don't have to call everyone out for a dinner, get drunk before we started mentioning work. So habit thing, I think we can be better after this.
Well, thank you so much, Shiyuan. And this is beautifully said and really appreciated. And I got a lot more understanding of your recent work and also your next project. I know that we didn't really plan to take questions, but there is one that I might just share with you, that someone asked which film you mentioned. What was the film that you mentioned and what is the name of it? So maybe she would like to watch it too.
Yeah. It's not difficult to find a list of really good awarded art films. The one I started from was Parasite. It was never on Netflix or HBO, so I rented it, I paid for it, and then I watched the analysis online of the film, including what's the meaning of the stone, or what's the icon of it, and then even the architecture design. I think I totally eat it out. This is a way of studying about it.
Great. Well, on that note, I would like to conclude this conversation today. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And I hope you head to Tanya Bonakdar's website to get to know more about the show and also getting a closer look of Shiyuan's work. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Xiaoyu.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Bye.